everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm so happy, so happy that you wanted to join me today because today I am finally going to talk about my compost. Yes, I know, it's been such a long time in the making. I've been wanting to make this video for so long, but each time I wanted to do it, something came in the way, and I also wanted the compost to be good, if that makes any sense. So now I am finally here. I also asked you guys on Instagram if there were any specific questions that you would like for me to answer in this video. So this is going to be me talking about my compost, me talking about composting in general and how you can get started and what you need to know, what can and cannot be composted. First of all, composting is a really essential part of zero waste living because composting essentially is a circular loop and a system, and that's what we want. That's what we want with everything, even our food scraps. And if you have ever seen the refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, rot, they are the kind of main pillars of zero waste, and rot actually refers to composting. But it has taken quite some time for me to actually get into it. I didn't start with a compost. I started zero waste about 5 years ago. 5, 7, no, 6, I don't know. It's been a long time, you guys. I didn't really know how to do it back then, so I ended up not doing it. And I also thought for the longest time that I couldn't do it because I didn't have a yard or garden. I live in an apartment without a balcony. Yes, and I thought for the longest time that I wasn't able to do it because of that, but that is actually not... That is actually not the case. So let's just get into how I built my compost. So the way I chose to do my compost was an inside compost. There are 3 kinds of composts. Generally, there is a community compost where compost is collected for you and composted by a company. Somewhere else, I like the communal compost. That is available for some people, and I envy all of you because that seems amazing. That's not the case in Denmark because composting is actually not that common yet. We use food scraps for other kinds of things sometimes, or it just ends up in the garbage. Then there's an outdoor compost, which I obviously do not have access to, which is usually used if people have like bigger yards and they need to compost like branches and leaves and stuff. But you can also use it for your food scraps and for your like kitchen waste. And then there's the indoor compost, which is the one that I have. An indoor compost is a tight container that you can have inside and where you can have your little circular system, and you can have them with or without worms. My compost is a worm compost and they are chilling for the max in my compost. The container that I have is just a normal plastic box that I found secondhand. Be sure to find a box that has a tight seal or that has a lid that closes really tight, otherwise you're going to smell your compost a lot, and that's not really what we want. I found this container in a secondhand shop and that was just absolutely perfect, so that's what I'm using now. You can also get devices and boxes that are specifically made for indoor composting, so if you have access to that, that can also be a good idea. The benefits of those are often that they have a ventilation system, so they ventilate air into your compost, and air is pretty crucial when it comes to composting. And they also sometimes isolate kind of smells and stuff like that, so that can also be good. Often there's also a drainage system if there is a lot of like liquids and water in the bottom, because you don't want that. If there's too much liquid in the bottom, it's not going to compost, it's just going to rot into this foul smelling mud, and that's not what you want at all. That's not a healthy compost. So I built up my compost in different layers, and I took a long time to really get the environment going. So I didn't take all my kitchen scraps and just threw them in there and every day just threw in more kitchen scraps. I sort of took a couple of weeks to see how it evolved and what it did, and I started out with some normal soil, and then I added some cardboard and some newspaper clippings, simply just to add some fiber. And then I added in some potato peels, some carrot peels, a compostable starch-based plastic bag from my vitamins, and I saw that dissolve completely, so that was really cool. And just a couple of kitchen scraps just to see how they are reacting, just to get familiar with the process as well. I think that's a good idea. And then I slowly added more and more to see how it was doing. And then at one point I got to a place where it had a lot of water because I've been adding a lot of fruit and veg, which has a lot of water. And then I needed to add more cardboard and more paper sort of to absorb some of this water. And then I added my worms when I was 100% sure that the environment was good and nice, and there was a lot of nutrients there, and it wasn't toxic. It's a cool experiment to do, and it's something that takes a little bit of patience to really get into, but once you're there, it's a really, really cool thing to have. I have placed my compost inside, obviously, in my kitchen below my sink, and whenever I have kitchen scraps, I just put them in there. Usually because I don't want to take it out, open the lid, put stuff in, put it back, take it out, like every single time I have to throw something away. I have a little bowl in my windowsill, and then I add stuff in that bowl throughout the day, and at the end of the day I'll throw it in my compost. The healthier the environment in your compost bin is, the more it is able to compost, and it's actually really cool to see how much stuff is able to completely disappear within this compost. Someone asked me if toenails and hair clippings and stuff, if that can be composted, and that is true. That can completely dissolve and disappear in your compost. If you are cutting your hair at home, you can simply add your hair to your compost, and you can also add your toenail clippings if that's your jam. Then there is stuff like clothes. You can actually add clothes to your compost, stuff like cotton and silk as well, and wool, and all kinds of natural materials can be composted and will dissolve completely, especially if they are organic materials that aren't treated with tons of chemicals. That is the case. I would recommend doing it in an outdoor compost if you have that, because I don't think I can fit a pair of jeans into my compost at this moment. I think that would be like too ambitious, if you feel, but it is possible, especially if you have a big compost. Then there's stuff like kitchen waste. There's tons of kitchen waste that can go into your compost, but also some kinds of kitchen wastes that cannot. First of all, if you have cooked food, that can go in your compost, but only if it's vegetables. Generally, I would try to stay away from putting any kind of animal product in your compost, because there is the risk of attracting pests and rats and stuff like that, and that accounts for both the indoor and the outdoor compost. So perhaps don't do that. Then there's stuff like citrus peels and onion peels. I wouldn't put a lot of that into compost. A little bit doesn't really matter, but if you put a lot of these peels into your compost, especially if you have a worm compost, the environment can become really, really acidic, and that can kill your worms and therefore also kill your compost. So perhaps don't do that. Instead, you can find tons of other really cool things to do with these peels. Citrus peels make great cleaning agents, and you can use onion peels in broth. And then there's stuff like paper and cardboard. Paper and cardboard can be composted just fine. It takes a couple of weeks, but that's literally no bother. And then there's stuff like compostable plastics. Oh boy, because someone asked on Instagram, is compostable the same as being composted? And no, it is not. Especially during these greenwashing times, a lot of products are labeled compostable, but that can mean a lot of different things and nothing at all, because being compostable is not the same as you can just go home to your home compost and compost this, honey, that's going to be fine. Some products are maybe able to break down in a controlled environment, and that controlled environment is not necessarily the same as your home compost bin. Those two can be completely different things. A controlled composting environment can be a communal compost, or like a government registered compost facility where everything is being controlled very, very carefully. Then maybe it's able to break down, but that has nothing to do with your home compost whatsoever. So a lot of products, you can try this at home, see how many of your compostable products that you're actually able to compost. I was so happy that my vitamin bags were actually compostable in my own house. That was like a big win. That's really cool, but it does not mean that it is compostable. The same is with biodegradable. A lot of the time biodegradable is being mistaken for compostable. Again, completely not the same thing. Fun fact, here's another thing that cannot be composted. Most tea bags and coffee filters actually have plastic in them, and therefore they cannot be composted. So, but you know what? I have been talking, and I've also put in some B-roll, obviously, but I think we should go and see how my compost is doing right now. Let's go do that, right? So this is my compost right now. There's a few different things in here. Here we have some soap berries, some newspaper. What is this? This is some carrot. And cardboard we have here. There's different things. Let's see, what's this? This is a house plant. Cool. Here is my second bag of compostable plastic. This has to go in the bottom actually, then it will dissolve completely, which is pretty cool. But let's see if we can find a worm. They're doing such a great job. Oh yeah, look at this. Also, if you use cardboard and paper, that will also help seal the smells, if there are any smells. But this right now, as I'm standing on top of it now, does not smell at all. Like, you get like this earthy scent. It's the same as if you put your nose into one of your houseplants, but there's no like rotting smell, anything like that. There's a tiny little bug right there, cool. Yeah, no weird big smells. Oh, look at that. Hello, buddy. You're doing great, sweetie. Another couple of important things. A compost, especially if it has worms, but also just generally, is a living thing. It is a living thing that you need to take care of, which means that if you live in a country with freezing degrees at night, or if you just live in a place where there's kind of a colder climate, having it outside will stop the composting process completely, because nothing composts during winter. And I haven't really had that much trouble with pests or like with small bugs and the compost attracting bugs and pests and whatnot. I did have a couple of small flies, but I don't know if they came from the compost or if they were attracted to my house plants, because that was the case last year because I have so many plants, so small flies were just everywhere. It was awful. Also, leave down below any comments or tips or personal experiences you have with compost, and if you have any questions, I would love to answer them in the comments as well. So I hope that you liked this video. I hope that this was something that you found useful in any way, sense or form. I loved making it, and this was a great video to show you. I was so excited to show you guys my compost, like actually excited. What is earth? So thank you so much for watching this video, and take really good care of yourselves and stay safe. Until next time, bye. Thank you so much for watching this video, and also a special thank you to my Patreon supporters. You guys help me create green, zero-waste content, and I love you guys. You can find the links to my social media accounts down below and the link to my Patreon on this screen. Bye!